Jason Miller wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, the corners of his shirt sticking to his back in the afternoon heat. It had been another long day at Brantley's auto repair, where he worked more hours than he slept, all to keep a roof over his and his daughters' heads. As a single dad raising 8-year-old Lily, every dollar mattered, and there were never quite enough of them. He had taken on the role of both mother and father after his wife, Emily, passed away from cancer 3 years ago. Since then, it had been nothing but grind. Early mornings, long nights, missed birthdays, and skipped meals, just to ensure Lily didn't go without. That Tuesday afternoon, Jason picked Lily up from school and made a quick stop at the local grocery store. They were walking back to his beat-up Ford pickup when he noticed a bright red Mustang parked awkwardly on the side of Maple Street. The hood was popped open, steam curling upward. A woman stood beside it, her phone in one hand and frustration written all over her face. Jason paused. Most folks would walk on by, but something about the sight stopped him. Maybe it was the way the woman kept glancing at the engine, clearly lost, or the subtle panic in her eyes, or maybe it was just who Jason was. Someone who couldn't turn away from someone in trouble. "Stay right here, Lil," he said, giving his daughter's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "I'll be right back." As he approached the car, the woman turned to him. She was tall, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket, with sunglasses perched atop her chestnut hair. She looked like she didn't belong in this quiet part of town, more like someone passing through.
"Trouble?"
Jason asked, nodding toward the smoking hood. The woman sighed. "Yeah, I think it overheated, but I'm not exactly a car expert." "Well, lucky for you," he said with a small smile. "I happen to be." She hesitated. "You sure? I can call roadside assistance. By the time they get here, I'll probably have it fixed," he said gently, already leaning in to inspect the engine. She studied him for a moment before stepping back and letting him work. Jason's hands moved with practiced ease. The radiator hose had popped loose and the coolant had all but boiled out. It wasn't a serious problem, not yet. He tightened a few clamps, added water from a jug he kept in his truck, and within 20 minutes, the car purred back to life. "There," he said, wiping his hands. "That should get you where you're going. But get that hose replaced soon, or you'll be back here again." The woman stared at him, surprised. That was fast. Jason shrugged. "Just a loose hose. You're lucky it didn't damage the engine." "I'm Riley," she said, offering her hand, "and I'm incredibly grateful. Please, let me pay you for your time." He shook her hand, firm but polite. "No need. Just glad to help. But maybe next time, try not to drive a classic like this without knowing her moods. These cars have personality." Riley laughed softly, noted. Lily had wandered over by then and clung to Jason's side. Riley noticed the way Jason rested a protective hand on her shoulder. "And who's this?" she asked, smiling down at the little girl. "This is Lily," Jason said. "My daughter. She's the real boss." Lily giggled. "Hi." "Lily," Riley said kindly. She turned back to Jason. "Well, I appreciate this more than you know. Most people wouldn't stop. Most people have places to be," he said with a shrug. "I just have to get this one home in time for cartoons." Riley smiled again, but there was something different in her expression now. Curiosity, interest, maybe even admiration. She looked back at the Mustang, then to Jason. "You really don't want anything for this?" He shook his head. "Just glad you're all right." She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "Well, in case you change your mind or need anything, I'm in town for a while." Jason glanced at the card briefly, but it only had a name, Riley, and a number. No company, no title. Just handwritten digits on a clean white card. He tucked it into his pocket without thinking. "Thanks. Safe travels." Riley got into the Mustang, gave Lily a little wave, and drove off, the engine roaring confidently down the road. As Jason and Lily returned to the truck, she looked up at him. "Daddy, was she a movie star?" "I doubt it, sweetheart." But something about Riley lingered in his mind. Her composure, her confidence. The way she didn't flinch around Grace and Rust, yet clearly wasn't used to being approached like an average person. She had an air of someone used to control, but also someone maybe tired of it. The next morning, Jason found the card again while tossing his jeans into the wash. He stared at it for a moment. Just a name. Just a number. No explanation. Little did he know Riley Lancaster wasn't just passing through town. She wasn't just another woman in distress with a fancy car. She was the CEO of Lancaster Motors, a company worth billions, known worldwide for its luxury vehicles and cutting-edge technology. And she hadn't just broken down on Maple Street. She had been watching. And what she saw in Jason Miller, a struggling single dad with oil-stained hands and a heart too big for his own good, was something that money couldn't buy. Something she hadn't found in boardrooms or executive suites. Something real. And she wasn't done with him yet. The following morning at Brantley's Auto Repair started like most others. Jason arrived early, coffee in hand, before the sun had even burned off the morning dew. He opened the garage bay doors, swept the oil-stained floor, and began work on an old Dodge truck that had been sitting in the corner for weeks. It was familiar, peaceful even, a rhythm he knew like second nature. But his mind kept drifting back to the woman from yesterday. The mysterious Riley with the classic red Mustang, the handwritten card, and the kind but unreadable smile. He'd meant to forget her. After all, people like her didn't usually linger in small towns like Rosefield. They passed through, thanked you politely, and disappeared. But at 10 past 10, as he was elbow deep in the Dodge's engine bay, he heard the rumble of an engine he instantly recognized, the Mustang. He wiped his hands quickly on a towel and stepped out into the sunlight. There she was, Riley, stepping out of her car with 2 takeaway cups and a brown paper bag in hand. Dressed in a simple blue blouse and jeans this time, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail, she looked less like the refined mystery woman from yesterday, and more like someone who belonged. "Morning," she called with a bright smile. "I come bearing caffeine and apology bagels." Jason chuckled, genuinely surprised. "I didn't know I was owed an apology." "For showing up unannounced," she replied, handing him a cup. "Cream and sugar, right?" He blinked. "How'd you know?" "I guessed," she said, winking. "Lucky guess." Jason took the coffee, still not entirely sure what was happening. "Thanks, you really didn't have to." "I wanted to," she said, perching herself on a nearby workbench like she'd done it 100 times. "I had some free time this morning and honestly I wanted to see this place. You mentioned you work here." "Well, it's not much to look at," Jason said, glancing around the faded signs and rusted tool cabinets. "But it pays the bills." Riley looked around with a strange kind of appreciation. "I like it. Has character." The Jason wasn't sure what to make of her. She wasn't acting like someone who was just grateful for roadside help. She was watching him, studying him, not in a judgmental way, but with intent, like she was looking for something specific. They talked easily for over half an hour. She asked about Lily, about his work, his favorite cars, how long he'd lived in Rosefield. Jason, guarded at first, slowly found himself opening up. He told her about his late wife, how he'd started fixing cars in high school, how he took over raising Lily on his own after Emily's death, and how every month was a tightrope walk between rent, groceries, and daycare. "I don't mean to pry," Riley said gently, sipping her coffee, "but you seem like you're doing it all on your own." "Yeah," Jason said with a tired shrug. "I mean, I've got a couple friends who help out when they can, but yeah, it's just us. Me and Lily against the world." There was a pause. Riley looked at him thoughtfully, and for a moment, Jason felt exposed, like she could see through the exhaustion he tried to hide, the worry he masked with humor. "You ever think about doing something else?" she asked. Jason laughed under his breath. "Like what? Opening a 5-star restaurant? Writing a novel? I mean, if money wasn't an issue. If someone offered to help you start something, build something of your own, would you take the chance?" Jason tilted his head, suddenly wary. "That's a strange question coming from someone I just met." Riley nodded, as if she expected the hesitation. "Fair enough. But sometimes strangers see things the people close to us overlook. The Jason studied her for a long moment, the air between them thick with unspoken thoughts. He could tell there was more to her than she let on. Her questions were too pointed, her presence too intentional. "All right," he said carefully. "Let me guess. You're not just some woman who broke down on Maple Street." Riley smiled slowly, neither confirming nor denying. "Maybe. Or maybe I just like old Mustangs and good coffee." Jason narrowed his eyes. "You're not going to tell me, are you?" "Not yet," she replied, sliding off the bench and tossing her cup in the trash. "But maybe soon. In the meantime, how about I bring lunch tomorrow? You can show me more of your world." He couldn't help but smile. "Sure. Just don't expect any Michelin stars." Riley grinned. "I like greasy burgers and broken engines more than you'd think." As she left, Jason watched her drive away, the sun glinting off the polished Mustang. Something about her stuck in his chest. She wasn't just passing through, she was staying. And for some reason, she'd chosen him to visit. That evening, after Lily fell asleep with her favorite book tucked under her arm, Jason sat alone on the porch, staring out at the stars. He pulled the small white card from his pocket again and turned it over in his hands. No last name, no company, just Riley and a number. He didn't know her story, but he could feel that something was coming, something big. And for the first time in years, the uncertainty didn't scare him. It made him curious. Jason woke up Friday morning to the smell of burnt toast and Lily humming to herself in the kitchen. She was trying to make breakfast again, a habit she'd picked up ever since she'd learned to crack eggs without crushing the shells. Jason smiled to himself as he walked into the tiny kitchen and kissed the top of her head. "What's the occasion?" he asked. "Miss Riley said she might come by today," Lily beamed. "So I wanted to surprise you." Jason chuckled softly. Riley had been dropping by the garage every other day for the past 2 weeks. Sometimes it was with food, sometimes coffee, and sometimes just a curious excuse to see how the shop works. At first, Jason thought it was a friendly thank you. Then it began to feel like something more. Riley asked questions, deep questions, about his life, his dreams, what he would do if he had more time, more resources, more freedom. It was unsettling but oddly comforting. She listened, really listened, like she genuinely cared. By noon, the garage was unusually quiet. Jason had just finished working on a Chevy pickup when he heard the unmistakable rumble of the red Mustang pull in. Riley stepped out, but this time she wasn't alone. A sleek black SUV pulled up behind her, and out stepped 2 sharply dressed individuals. One a tall man with a clipboard and sunglasses, the other a woman in heels and a designer suit that looked completely out of place in dusty Rosefield. Jason wiped his hands and walked toward them, confused. "Riley, what's going on?" Riley smiled gently, but there was a seriousness in her eyes he hadn't seen before. "Jason, I think it's time I stop hiding something from you. I've enjoyed these past couple of weeks more than I expected. But I've also been dishonest." Jason folded his arms cautiously. "All right." She turned toward the SUV and nodded. The man stepped forward and handed Jason a packet. On the front was a gold, embossed emblem, Lancaster Motors, Incorporated. Jason looked from the folder to Riley and back again. "Wait, Lancaster. As in the car company." Riley nodded slowly. "I'm Riley Lancaster, CEO of Lancaster Motors. My family founded the company 3 generations ago. I've been running it since I was 30. Jason blinked, stunned. "You're joking." "I'm not. I'm sorry for not telling you sooner, but I needed to see who you really were. Not someone impressed by money or status. Just someone kind, honest, genuine." Jason shook his head slowly, still trying to process. "So the car breaking down. It wasn't exactly an accident," she admitted, looking almost sheepish. "I was driving through town on my way back from a supplier meeting. Your shop was on my list for possible outreach, but then I saw you helping a stranded family on the side of the road before you even noticed me. And I got curious. Then my Mustang really did overheat, and the rest, well, it unfolded naturally." Jason couldn't believe what he was hearing. The woman who had shared bagels with him, who sat cross, legged on his dusty workbench and laughed at his jokes, was the head of a billion-dollar corporation. It felt surreal. Why me? He asked finally. Why all of this? Riley took a breath, stepping closer. Because in all the business meetings and boardrooms I sit in, I rarely meet people who remind me what matters. You do. You're talented, humble, driven. And you've built something from nothing while raising a daughter on your own. That's strength. That's integrity. I see potential in you, Jason, and I want to help you grow. She motioned to the folder. Inside is a proposal. I want to open a new classic restoration division for Lancaster Motors, focused entirely on authentic, small-town craftsmanship. You'd lead it. The first branch would be right here. We'd renovate this garage, rebrand it under your name. Full investment. You'd have creative control, a generous salary, health benefits, schooling for Lily, everything. Jason stared at her, stunned. You're serious. Dead serious. And I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering this because you earned it. You helped a stranger without asking for anything in return. And I believe you have the vision to build something amazing. The Jason looked down at the papers, his hands trembling. It was everything he'd never dared to dream of. Stability, dignity, a future for Lily. But part of him hesitated. He'd been let down before, by promises, by employers, by people who said one thing and did another. And now, here was a billionaire offering to change his life. Could he trust it? I don't know what to say, he whispered. Say yes, Riley said softly, her eyes locking with his. Take the leap. Just then, Lily came running in from the house next door, her ponytail bouncing. Daddy! Is Miss Riley staying for dinner? Jason looked at Riley. She smiled, warm and patient. I'd love to, she said to Lily, then turned back to Jason. But only if your dad agrees to let me build his empire. The Jason laughed despite himself. The tension in his chest loosened a little. He knelt and pulled Lily into a hug. Then he stood and looked Riley in the eye. All right, he said slowly. Let's build something real. 6 months later, the once run-down garage on the corner of Maple and Fifth Avenue had transformed into a sleek, modern facility with polished glass windows, fresh paint in deep navy and chrome accents, and a bold new sign out front: Miller Restorations, a Lancaster division. Inside, the smell of motor oil still lingered, but now it mingled with the hum of top-tier machinery, freshly delivered from Lancaster's state of the art manufacturing plants. Everything was new. The tools, the hydraulic lifts, the custom-built parts storage, even the polished concrete floor. But at the heart of it all was still Jason Miller, now wearing a clean mechanic's jumpsuit embroidered with his name in gold thread. He still got his hands dirty, still rolled under cars with grease on his cheek, but the bags under his eyes had faded. There was peace in his smile, purpose in his every movement. He was no longer just surviving. He was thriving. Business had boomed the day Lancaster Motors announced their partnership with local legend Jason Miller as the face of their new classic restoration line. News crews rolled into town. Automotive magazines featured exclusive interviews. Clients from 3 states away drove in just to book a restoration slot. And through it all, Jason stayed grounded. His first hires were 2 of his old co-workers from Brantley's Auto Repair, guys who had helped him cover shifts when Lily got sick or his truck broke down. He paid them better than anyone else in town. Then he brought in young apprentices, kids who reminded him of himself. Curious, hardworking, underdogs who needed a shot. Every afternoon at 3:00 p.m., Jason still left the shop for half an hour to pick up Lily from her new private school. Riley had quietly arranged for her tuition, but Jason insisted on contributing once money started coming in. Lily, now brighter and more confident, had begun writing short stories in class and proudly read them aloud to Jason and Riley in the evenings. Their home life had shifted from struggle to serenity. The small rental they once lived in was now replaced by a cozy craftsman house, complete with a front porch swing and a backyard where Lily had planted a garden. Riley, too, had changed. She continued to run Lancaster Motors from afar, but had spent more and more time in Rosefield. She rented a cottage just a few blocks from Jason's new home, Though it didn't take long before dinner invitations turned into weekend stays, and weekend stays turned into something more permanent. She traded her heels for boots, her tailored suits for flannel jackets. At first, people whispered, what was a billionaire doing in Rosefield of all places? But soon, her warmth and sincerity disarmed even the most skeptical neighbors. She volunteered at the local shelter, donated funds anonymously to rebuild the library, and helped sponsor a free lunch program at Lily's school. But most importantly, she was present at Lily's science fair, Jason's grand opening, and every Sunday dinner that became their small tradition. Jason had long resisted the idea of mixing personal and professional lives, especially after what he'd been through. But with Riley, everything felt different. She had seen him at his worst and never looked away. There was no performance, no pressure, just a deep and growing respect that slowly blossomed into something more tender. Their connection had been built not on wealth or status, but on small, meaningful moments. A shared coffee on the shop steps, a quiet walk after sunset, the way she laughed when Lily called her Miss Sparkplug. It was during the grand reopening event of Miller Restorations that everything finally came full circle. The mayor gave a speech, local vendors lined the street, and hundreds gathered to witness the official ribbon cutting. Jason stood on a small stage in front of the new shop, Lily by his side holding the golden scissors. Riley stood slightly off to the left, dressed simply in jeans and a navy blouse, allowing Jason to shine. But as he looked out over the crowd, he shook his head and motioned for her to join him on stage. I know most of you are here because you heard about the big partnership. Jason began, gripping the microphone. And believe me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it too. But before all of this, before the cameras and the contracts, I was just a guy trying to fix cars and raise his daughter the best way he knew how. And then one day, this incredible woman's Mustang broke down outside a grocery store. I thought I was helping her. Turns out, she was the one helping me. He turned to Riley, offering her his hand. She joined him on stage, a slight flush coloring her cheeks as the crowd watched with warm curiosity. This shop, this opportunity, it didn't come because I was lucky. It came because someone believed in what I could be, not just what I was. And I don't think I've said it enough, but thank you, Riley, for everything. The crowd erupted in applause, and Lily raised the scissors in triumph. Together, the three of them cut the ribbon, officially opening the shop under its new banner. Later that evening, when the crowd had thinned and the last of the food trucks rolled away, Jason and Riley sat on the steps of the garage, watching the sun dip below the rooftops. You changed my life, Jason said softly. You changed mine first, Riley replied. I thought I had everything: money, power, success. But I didn't know what real strength looked like until I saw you carrying the world on your shoulders without ever asking for help. He turned to her, reaching for her hand. You gave me hope when I didn't think I deserved any. As she smiled, eyes glistening. You always deserved it. You just forgot how to believe in yourself. Jason leaned in, pressing his forehead gently against hers. I'm remembering now. And as the stars began to blink into the night sky, with Lily's laughter drifting from the backyard and the quiet hum of a new life surrounding them, Jason knew this wasn't just a chapter. It was the beginning of an entirely new story, one built on trust, love, and the simple decision to help a stranger on the side of the road.